Mia's fingers flew across the keyboard, her focus intense as she put the finishing touches on her latest freelance project. The soft glow of her computer screen illuminated her face in the dim light of early evening. Outside her apartment window, the city hummed with its usual energy, but for once, Mia felt somewhat in sync with its rhythm. 6 months had passed since she'd walked out of her office job, taking a leap into the unknown world of freelancing. The transition hadn't been easy. There were moments of doubt, of loneliness, of wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. But slowly, surely, she was finding her footing. As she hit send on the completed project, Mia leaned back in her chair with a satisfied sigh. Her gaze drifted to a small stack of boxes in the corner of the room, the last remnants of her move, still unpacked after all this time. Something about those boxes nagged at her, like a task left unfinished, a part of herself still packed away. "Maybe it's time," she murmured to herself, standing up and stretching. As she approached the boxes, Mia felt a strange mix of anticipation and apprehension. What forgotten pieces of herself might she rediscover? Little did she know, as she reached for the first box, that she was about to unpack far more than just physical possessions. The next chapters of her life were waiting to unfold, filled with unexpected connections and new perspectives on the city she called home.
Mia sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes. She'd been meaning to properly unpack these last few boxes for months, but work and life always seemed to get in the way. Now, with a rare free afternoon stretching before her, she'd finally decided to tackle the task. Most of the boxes contained old books, winter clothes, and various knickknacks from her pre-city life. But as she opened the final box, a small pastel-colored envelope caught her eye. Her name was written on the front in childish handwriting. With a jolt, Mia remembered what it was. A letter to her future self, written as part of a school project when she was 10 years old. She'd completely forgotten about it. With slightly shaky hands, she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. "Dear future Mia," it began. "I hope when you read this, you're living in a big city with lots of friends and going on amazing adventures every day. I bet you're a famous artist now, and everyone loves your drawings. Do you have a dog? I hope you have a dog. And I hope you're happy. That's the most important thing. Love, little Mia." Mia leaned back against the couch, the letter clutched to her chest. Tears pricked at her eyes, but they weren't entirely sad. Yes, her life looked different from what her 10-year-old self had imagined. But was that really a bad thing? She thought about her freelance work, which allowed her the freedom to create on her own terms. She thought about quiet mornings in Rosie's cafe, afternoons spent exploring the city's hidden corners, evenings lost in a good book or a challenging design project. It wasn't a life filled with constant social interaction or wild adventures, but it was a life that felt authentically hers. And wasn't that its own kind of happiness? Mia stood up, walking to her desk. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and a pen. It was time to write a new letter, not to her future self but to her past self. To tell little Mia that happiness comes in many forms, and that it's okay to find joy in solitude, in small moments, in being true to oneself. As she began to write, Mia felt a sense of peace settle over her. She was exactly where she needed to be. The community center was alive with activity as Mia pushed open the heavy doors. She clutched her bag of art supplies, heart racing with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It had been years since she'd taken an art class, and never one quite like this. Mr. Chen had been the one to suggest it, mentioning it casually over one of their now regular afternoon teas. "You spend too much time alone with your computer," he'd said, eyes twinkling. "Art is meant to be shared, no?" Now, as Mia found her way to the classroom, she wondered if she'd made a mistake. But it was too late to turn back. She could see the instructor setting up at the front of the room. "Welcome, everyone," the instructor, a woman with wild curly hair and paint-splattered overalls, called out. "I'm Zoe. Today we're going to explore abstract expressionism. The goal isn't perfection, it's emotion. Let the paint guide you." Mia set up her easel, squeezing bright colors onto her palette. Around her, other students did the same. There was nervous laughter, the scrape of chairs, the snap of canvas being stretched. As Zoe put on some instrumental music and encouraged them to begin, Mia took a deep breath and picked up her brush. The first stroke was tentative, but as the music swelled, she found herself getting lost in the process. Colors blended and swirled, her arm moving almost of its own accord. Time seemed to slip away. It wasn't until Zoe called for a break that Mia became aware of her surroundings again. She stepped back from her canvas, surprised by what she saw. The painting was raw, emotional, nothing like her usual precise digital designs. "That's really powerful," a voice said beside her. Mia turned to see a woman with short silver hair and kind eyes. "I'm Rita, by the way." "Mia," she replied, surprised to find herself smiling. "Thanks. I'm not sure where it came from, to be honest." "That's the beauty of it," Rita said. "Sometimes we need to let go of control to truly express ourselves." As the class continued, Mia found herself chatting easily with Rita and a few other students during breaks. They exchanged thoughts on the process, on art, on life in the city. It wasn't forced or overwhelming, just a natural flow of conversation between people sharing an experience. When the class ended, Mia lingered, helping Zoe clean up. "Will you be back next week?" "Oh yes." Mia looked around the room, at her paint-splattered hands, at the vibrant canvas she'd created. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with her certainty. "Yes, I think I will." The phone rang, pulling Mia's attention away from her computer screen. Her mother's name flashed on the display. With a mix of affection and trepidation, Mia answered. "Hi, Mom." "Mia, my girl. How are you? It's been ages since we talked. Mia leaned back in her chair, gazing out the window at the city skyline. I'm good, Mom. Work's been keeping me busy. That's wonderful, dear. But are you getting out? Making friends? You know I worry about you all alone in that big city. There it was, the concern that always lurked beneath her mother's cheerful exterior. In the past, Mia might have deflected, changing the subject or making up stories about a busy social life. But today something made her pause. Actually, Mom, she said slowly, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Oh, her mother said, a note of surprise in her voice. Mia took a deep breath. I know you worry, but I'm okay, really. I'm learning that it's okay to enjoy my own company, to find fulfillment in my work and in small, everyday moments. She told her mother about her conversations with Mr. Chen, about the art class, about quiet mornings in Rosie's cafe. As she spoke, Mia realized she was articulating thoughts and feelings she hadn't fully acknowledged before. Don't get me wrong, she continued. I'm not closing myself off from connections. I'm just learning to appreciate the life I have, while being open to new experiences. There was a long pause. Mia held her breath, waiting for her mother's response. Oh, Mia, her mother finally said, her voice thick with emotion. That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. For finding your own path, for being true to yourself. As they continued to talk, Mia felt the weight lifting off from her shoulders. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly seen and understood by her mother. It was a connection she hadn't realized she'd been missing. The community center's main hall buzzed with excitement. Easels were set up in a rough circle, each displaying a canvas covered by a cloth. Mia stood by her own creation, fidgeting nervously. All right, everyone. Zoe's voice rang out above the chatter. It's time for our grand reveal. Artists, please uncover your masterpieces. With trembling hands, Mia pulled the cloth from her canvas. She stepped back, seeing her work displayed publicly for the first time. It was a cityscape, but not a realistic one. Buildings melted into each other, streaks of color representing the energy and movement of urban life. And there, in the center, a solitary figure stood at a window, observing, but also part of the scene. It's beautiful, Miss Mia. She turned to see Mr. Chen standing beside her, his eyes twinkling with pride. You came, Mia said, touched by his presence. Of course, he replied. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As they stood there, other visitors began to approach Mia's painting. She overheard snippets of conversation, words like evocative, powerful, and lonely, but not in a sad way. Each comment made her heart race a little faster. Rita appeared at her elbow, grinning widely. Mia, this is incredible. You've really captured something here. Mia felt a blush creeping up her cheeks. Thanks, Rita. Yours is amazing too. She gestured to Rita's abstract piece, a swirl of blues and greens that somehow managed to convey a sense of serenity. As the evening wore on, Mia found herself drawn into conversations with strangers who were moved by her work. She explained her process, her inspirations, surprised at how easily the words came. It wasn't overwhelming or draining as social interactions had often been in the past. Instead, she felt energized, connected through the shared language of art. Rosie from the cafe showed up, beaming as she took in Mia's painting. I knew you were talented, but this is something else, dear. The offer to display your work at the cafe still stands, you know. Mia nodded, a spark of excitement igniting in her chest. I think I'd like that, Rosie. Thank you. As the exhibition began to wind down, Mia found herself standing alone before her painting. She studied it, seeing it with new eyes after hearing others' interpretations. The solitary figure at the window no longer seemed isolated. Instead, it appeared poised, ready to step out into the vibrant world beyond. She realized that in creating this piece, in sharing it with others, she had taken her own step forward. It wasn't a dramatic leap, but a quiet, significant shift. She was still Mia, still someone who valued her solitude and inner world. But she was also someone who could reach out, who could connect, who could share parts of herself with others. The thought brought a smile to her face, small but genuine. Felt like the beginning of something new. Mia sat at her desk, fingers hovering over her keyboard. The cursor blinked steadily on the blank document before her. She'd been commissioned to write an artist's statement for her upcoming show at Rosie's Cafe, but the words weren't coming easily. How could she encapsulate her journey in a few paragraphs? How could she explain the subtle shift from isolation to connection, from loneliness to solitude, that had occurred over the past months? She glanced around her apartment, taking in the familiar sights. Her easel stood in the corner, a half-finished painting resting on it. A small potted plant, a gift from Mr. Chen, sat on the windowsill. A bulletin board hung on the wall, pinned with sketches, notes, and a flyer for the next community art class. Turning back to her computer, Mia began to type. The city is a paradox. It's a place of constant movement and noise, yet it can be the loneliest place in the world. For a long time, I saw myself as separate from the urban landscape around me, an observer but never a participant. But I've come to realize that there's beauty in this observation, in the quiet moments of solitude. There's strength in standing apart, in finding one's own rhythm amidst the city's chaotic beat. And there's connection to be found in the most unexpected places. In a neighbor's kindness, in a shared passion for art, in the simple act of creating something and putting it out into the world. My work explores this delicate balance between solitude and connection, between being apart from and a part of the city. It's a celebration of the quiet moments, the small interactions, the subtle shifts that can change our perception of the world around us and our place within it. Through my art, I invite viewers to find their own moments of pause, to appreciate the beauty of solitude without forgetting the power of human connection. In the end, we are all part of the city's tapestry, each thread unique but interconnected, creating something far greater than the sum of its parts. Mia sat back, reading over what she'd written. It wasn't perfect, but it felt true, felt like her. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a young woman standing in the hallway, looking nervous. "Hi," the woman said. "I'm Jade. I just moved in next door and, well, I was wondering if you might know where I could find a good grocery store nearby." Mia felt a moment of hesitation, her old instinct to retreat pushing at her. But then she thought of Mr. Chen, of the art class, of all the small connections that had enriched her life over the past months. She smiled at Jade. "Actually, I was just about to head out for some groceries myself. Would you like to come along? I can show you around the neighborhood a bit." Jade's face lit up. "Really? That would be great, thank you." As Mia grabbed her keys and closed her apartment door behind her, she felt a sense of coming full circle. She was still Mia, still someone who valued her independence and cherished her moments of solitude. But she was also someone who could reach out, who could welcome new connections. The city hummed around them as they stepped out onto the street. Mia pointed out her favorite cafe, the community center, the small park tucked between towering buildings. As they walked and talked, Mia realized that this delicate balance between solitude and connection was where she belonged. The urban landscape stretched out before them, full of possibilities. And Mia was ready to explore them, one small interaction at a time.